Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker, and welcome to the new format of the Destination Marketing Podcast. For those of you that didn't hear my last episode, we're making a couple of simple changes here to the way we run the show. You know, we did it the same way for about 7 years, and I think we got the 7-year itch is what happened, and we decided that it was time for a little bit of a change. And so I'm doing a little bit of a monologue before I get into the interview, and we'll probably chat a little bit with our guests. And we've got some really great guests today that I'm excited to have join us. But before we do, I actually want to take you guys on a little bit of a journey of what's happened to me over the last 5 days, 3 days. And it's incredibly relevant to each of you in the industry. And I hope that you will actually go on a similar journey after hearing what I have to say. So on Friday, I recorded an episode of the other show that I do, Destination Discourse, with Stuart Butler. And Stuart told me about some of the projects that they had executed on at Visit Myrtle Beach recently, where they leveraged Claude Cowork in order to get some of their projects done. And he said, Adam, I think we're at a watershed moment here where everything changes and nothing will ever be the same. Because my team normally spends days putting together our board reports, and in 10 minutes, they got the best one they had ever done from Claude Cowork by feeding it the correct data and information. And so after I heard that, you know, Stuart tends to speak a little bit in hyperbole from time to time. And so I was like, oh, how serious is this? Was it really that good? But I went and I signed up for Claude Cowork. I had seen a lot about it on Twitter and hadn't really embraced it yet. So that was Friday at about 12:30 my time that I downloaded Claude Cowork and signed up and got everything moving. And I have spent a ridiculous number of hours since 12:30 on Friday working with and testing and trying out Claude Cowork on a variety of different tasks. And I've got to say, as much as I love to give Stuart a hard time and say that he speaks in hyperbole, he was absolutely correct. I want to share a couple of the projects that I did. I won't share all of them because it'll probably be like 5-6 hours as I go through all the cool stuff. And I can tell you my team is already tired of hearing about the stuff that I did over the weekend. But I do want to give you guys a couple of examples. So one of the first things that I did to test it out is I opened up my LinkedIn profile. And they have a Chrome extension. So there's two parts of Claude Cowork. One is the desktop app that you can download and work on if you want to start a project from scratch. But if you have a page open on your browser and you want to do a project related to the browser that you have open, there's a Chrome extension. And so I used the Chrome extension. I opened up my LinkedIn profile and I asked it to give me a full audit of my LinkedIn profile, including the posts that I've made, also my bio and everything in it, and maximize it for the value to those who may want to listen or consume my content. And it came back with a massive list of items, including I didn't even have the description of a couple of things in my bio organized correctly. And after it came back with that, that's no different from a lot of other AI tools. And so, you know, that while that's really cool, it's not terribly impressive. But then I said, okay, for all the things you have the ability to implement without me, please move forward and do it. And it went and updated every component of my LinkedIn profile that it could, including a full content recommendation. And so then that kind of got my wheels turning. When I saw that it was capable of working on my behalf within my LinkedIn profile, I kind of, the snowball really started rolling. And then I said, okay, I want to understand the top 20 topics related to destination marketing that are being discussed, whether it's on Reddit, whether it's on social media, whether it's on message boards, wherever you can find it. I want you to find the top 20 topics, and I want you to help me understand what those topics are and how I can create content related to those topics. It came back with the 20 top topics that are being discussed in the industry with content recommendations associated with those topics. And then it said, would you like me to build the content and create a content calendar as well? And I'm like, heck yeah, let's do it. And I now have a 90-day content calendar with every single topic that I could want to post about. And it's not just Adam coming up with the topics, it's what are the topics that are most relevant in the industry based on the conversation that's happening online. And everything from blog posts to newsletters to LinkedIn posts to Instagram posts, all of that is written. Now, does that mean I'm going to use every single bit of it? No, that's where the human comes in, right? You have to evaluate, you have to edit. But then I did say, well, how about for the LinkedIn portion, why don't you go ahead and schedule the post for me just to see if it could do it? And this morning it scheduled all my LinkedIn posts for the next 2 months. I'm going to go in and delete them, and I'm going to go kind of make sure that they all match the voice. But again, I'm testing the capabilities, right? What can this thing do? And what I'm finding is that Claude Cowork is going to change the game for marketers in all parts of both the destination marketing industry and the world. And not just for marketers, but everybody that's doing any kind of knowledge work is about to become 10 times more efficient. And those who don't are about to be left behind. And so I really encourage anybody who's been in wait and see mode with AI to try out Claude Cowork, because the time has come. You can no longer wait anymore. And what it just did for me over the weekend, I kid you not when I say I probably got about 3 weeks of work done over the weekend compared to what I normally get done and in a week. And I couldn't believe it. So anyway, for all of you that are listening, it's really important. It's not hyperbole. Claude Cowork is going to change the way you work on a day-to-day basis, and this is still just the beginning of what it's going to become. So with that, I really want to welcome our guests in today, and we'll start. I want to hear their reactions to what I'm saying about Claude Cowork, but I've got Jake Wynn and I've got Heidi Schlag with me today, and you guys, I'm really grateful that you joined me today on the show in this new format for the Destination Marketing Podcast.
Thanks for having us, Adam.
Yeah, excited to be here, out of the future and into the past with this with this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love to have each of you just real quick tell me who you are and what you do. So Jake, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Heidi.
Yeah, my name's Jake Wynn. I am the Senior Marketing and Communications Manager for Visit Frederick, Maryland. I've been there for about 4.5 years, and I do have a background in heritage tourism. I spent 8 years working at the National Museum of Civil War Medicine in Frederick. So I kind of straddle the line between the history world and the destination marketing world. So excited to be here with you.
Love it. Love it. Heidi, go ahead.
I'm Heidi Schlag. I also live in Frederick, Maryland, just as a coincidence. And I am a heritage tourism marketing strategist. I own the company Heritage Tourism Studio, and I work on the concept that we're going to be talking about today, that there's DMOs who are really interested in promoting their destination. And then there's history and cultural organizations who hold a lot of those stories that make destinations unique, and how I work on how those groups can work together to tell a great story of place.
Perfect. So I got to meet both of you guys when I went and spoke at your amazing conference that you put on called MAPRA. It was one of the most closely knit, tight relationship groups that I've been able to be a part of. It was very clearly a family, and love the opportunity to get to know both of you. And appreciated the opportunity to go speak. I want to ask you guys about the monologue that I gave kind of coming into this conversation. Have you tried Claude Cowork, and what's your reaction to some of the stuff that I was sharing with you there?
Yeah, I can speak to it as somebody that is went through my recent trial phase with it, of giving it a go within the last 2 weeks. So I'm right there with you. It's this Anthropic's work with Claude is really creating that kind of next generation of AI, where it's going, where it's, taking all of the incredible technology that has been developed over the last, couple of decades, and it's all coming together in a way that it is already changing the environment of work. And I can, as somebody that I like to be an early adopter of technology wherever I can, just to try it on. And I had that similar experience with ChatGPT when it first rolled out and integrated it into my work. And I can very much see how this new tool is going to be integrated into every part of my work, from from my Visit Frederick work to things that I'm doing outside of that in the public history realm as well. It's all very relevant.
Great. What about you, Heidi?
Well, I haven't tried Claude Cowork, but I will be as soon as we finish recording this podcast. I heavily use ChatGPT. I have so many, personal agents built for each of my clients and for my own business. So I've been sort of, reticent to start over in Claude. But the fact that, it sounds like they have introduced agentic AI is the thing that's going to get me to give it a test run. So I'll report back.
Yeah, I'd love to hear in ChatGPT, you said you've set up individual agents for each of your clients. How are you using that?
So I have uploaded all of their documentation, and it's publicly available. I'm not putting anything up there that is proprietary, but
Sure.
their strategic plans and my proposal, what the contract looks like, the work that I'm supposed to be producing for them. And that really just helps supercharge my ability to draft things. I don't like to write, but I'm a great editor. So I use AI to generate a first draft for me. And then I go in and basically edit it, move things around, go back and ask AI clarifying questions, or say, this doesn't make sense. And then it goes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, you're the smartest person AI has ever met, right?
Yeah. So that's basically how I'm using it right now, is to brainstorm and generate content into a first draft. And then I go through and, use the strategic know-how that I have to elevate it to something that I can actually send to the client.
Yeah, and to be clear, I would say you're probably still on the front end from a usage perspective of what's happening. I've seen in a lot of parts of the industry, I think there's been a little bit of a slow adoption curve for a lot of destination marketers. And, you're dealing with government funds. And so for a lot of these destination marketers, I can understand 100% where they're coming from on kind of waiting and seeing, because you don't want to sign on to a technology that's going to be obsolete in 3 months, which we've actually seen happen a few times along the way. So I totally understand that. I'm excited, Heidi, for you to try the Claude Cowork side of things, because when you can actually start giving it tasks and you get to watch it go in. I got to the point over the weekend where I had 7 different tabs open, each with the Claude Cowork extension on it, executing on different tasks that I had given it. And it just starts to blow your mind with what it's capable of. So anyway, I'm really excited as this technology continues to evolve. I hope that all of us in the industry, as we find these use cases, can start sharing with each other more often and helping everybody progress together, because all boats rise in the tide. And I really feel like as an industry, we've got to continue to push forward. So any other thoughts related to AI or Claude Cowork before we move into our topic today?
I'll just say I work with a lot of history organizations, and there has been a real fear, I think, especially from historians, about AI. And so that might be too in the weeds for this particular conversation.
No, I love it.
But I do think that that's something that is really important for us to pay attention to, is how we're using AI, especially when we're interpreting historical facts, because there's a lot of opportunity for bias and hallucinations to creep in. And that is very scary to historians, for very good reasons.
So you're bringing up such, and it's actually a great segue from the starting point of the conversation into where we're going, because one of the issues that happens is we are inevitably going to get to the point where humans rely so much on AI's intelligence that we won't recognize the subtle times that it gets it wrong. And what that means for the museums and historical organizations and societies that are out there is that if they're not careful in the way they approach it, the risk, and I'm not saying that it's going to happen with every single one, but the risks that they take is the real history being erased, misinterpreted, or hallucinated, and then losing exactly what they were established to protect and preserve. And so I definitely can see a little bit of the reticence on the AI side of things. How do you, in the historical and museum space, make sure that you use technology to make your organization more efficient and make sure you get the benefits without falling victim to some of the risks that are out there? That's a really important dilemma for those in your industry to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So outside of my work for Visit Frederick, I do kind of maintain a historian presence online. I run a blog and a podcast as well. It's all about public history, a lot of Pennsylvania history, kind of where I grew up. And yeah, I will say that, from the standpoint of doing history work in a world of AI, my focus is always about the efficiency piece of this. It's just like the work at Visit Frederick, where it's about how can I do things more efficiently, get things done faster, make myself more efficient, and do things that I wouldn't be able to just without the AI tools. And I bring that over to the history work as well, where I try to do, the ideating and some of the research, and especially about and what AI is really good at, especially with Claude, is going through huge data sets and being able to pull out information with a higher degree of accuracy than you would see with, we say, ChatGPT. Of course, checking that work, but it does allow you to go through information very quickly, and that allows for data analysis that, for a person trying to do research while having a full-time job as well, it allows me to be a lot more efficient and to be able to pull out stories that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So that's where it comes in. I do not use it for writing purposes. I will use it for things like, some search engine optimization, getting keywords right, integrating that into how AI search is changing as well. And those are skill sets that I love in the public history work that I get to do on my website, winninghistory.com. I get to kind of bring some of those successes that I've had, where I get to play and be a little more experimental, and bring some of those successes back into my day job, which is it's a lot of fun, and it's really cool to get to see how these AI tools are changing the game, both personally and professionally.
Well, some of this is framing, right? Because I think there's a way you can frame it to where AI is a threat to museums and historical preservation. I think the alternate frame for this is, because of AI, the importance of our historical preservation and museums is going to increase. Because what you're actually going to find is, if you really want a true picture of history related to a specific topic, the place you're going to find the true history, if preserved correctly, is the museum. And what's going to be fascinating is, how do we encourage people, if they truly want to understand history, to go beyond the quick chat with the AI technology? And then also, how do you promote? Because I see an opportunity for promotion as a museum to start calling out some of these AI hallucinations and establishing myself as the thought leader or the authority on the specific topic that my museum is related to or built upon. So, Heidi, with that, I mean, do you see the same opportunity for you all as you're thinking about how to move forward?
Yeah, as Jake said, I'm taking the same basic approach he is when working with history museums, is that right now I'm focused more on the productivity side of things than on the doing history piece of it, because I really do feel like you still need a human involved when you're talking about history, especially complicated history. But what I've been emphasizing is that I would like museums to see themselves more as tourism institutions and not just as scholarly institutions. So what I am looking...
Explain the difference between the two for those that are listening, because I think that's an important point.
Sure. And I'm speaking in generalizations. This really runs the gamut. But museums for many, many years have this reputation of being, ivory halls and PhDs, and appeals to a certain demographic, and then other demographics feel like they don't have a place. And the museum field has really been focused on changing that perception over the past, I'd say, 10 or 20 years. But it's still very much on a spectrum of how that change is being implemented. And not everybody sees themselves as a player in the tourism economy. And that's something that Jake and I have been talking about. We've been to several different museum conferences over the past year talking about that topic and how they can work more in a more coordinated fashion with their DMOs. And then we are also, one of the reasons we're on this show is to take that same message to the DMOs that these institutions are really drivers of economic development and tourism.
Yeah. I want to point out, and Jake, I want to get to you, but I want to point out to the audience what you just said, because I think it's so important that if museums continue to see themselves as scholarly institutions, what I'm picturing is the grandpa who will stand there and read all the fixed posts, right, and the long form descriptions of what happened, and the grandkids are running around completely uninterested in what they're experiencing, right? Whereas if you move it to a tourism experience institution where they're still having a historical experience, but it's not structured in the way that the scholars of old required it to be structured to be interesting, I think that's what has to happen from an evolution perspective for these museums to be able to continue to replace the conveyor belt of audience where, at some point the older audience is dropping off. And if you don't backfill with a younger audience, you're going to be in big trouble over time. And that's where you actually start to risk the historical preservation that is the whole point of these institutions as they're established. So I think that's a really great point about the transition that they need to make. And you two, like you mentioned, are going kind of conference by conference, helping educate destinations and museums on how to work better together to help with that transition. So, Jake, what can you add to some of what Heidi said in helping these museums continue to evolve and involving the destination correctly in the process? The websites in our industry are built for the past, not the future. And we've got a major, major problem with that. These are glorified directories that have been entirely designed to deliver bottom of funnel metrics, clicks, and impressions to the stakeholders that we serve. But we all know that at some point that house of cards is going to come crashing down. And the purpose of a DMO is to inspire travel. We lost that vision along the way when we were building these websites, and the pendulum has got to swing back. We've built, in conjunction with a company called Destination Core, a very unique content-first website product that's built specifically to help engage and inspire visitors to book a trip to the destination. So if your website is at all a pain point for you, make sure you hit me up, adam@thebrandrevolt.com. We'll take a look at what you've got going on. And of course, this only makes sense for people who are building genuine inspirational content for their audiences. And if you are, you need a content-first CMS and website that attracts visitation and inspires visitation to your destination. So hit me up, adam@thebrandrevolt.com.
Yeah, looking at it more from the destination side, I think that, increasingly, I think this is great framing around this to talk about with AI and what it's doing to, both the destination marketing industry and consumers, and how they are getting information about traveling, about making, decisions about what they're going to do when they travel. From a historical perspective, there is a lot of the kind of AI slop that's out there. And so social media is awash in this, where you can't really tell what's real, what's not real. And people are just making stuff up in terms of history. And it's really hard to engage with that, because it's very clear, just from my perspective of looking and seeing the conversation in these posts, in the comments section. I know you're never supposed to read the comments, but I inevitably do. And it's just like,
we
like
all
people,
do.
Yep. And it's just like people, there's a disconnect there. So one of the things that I think is going to be really important for both destinations, especially those with an intense kind of heritage tourism element of what they do, and for the museums and historic sites all over the place, is really going to be about that authentic experience. I know that's kind of a cliche, but it's the real place. And the power of place is going to be really important, because getting to the location, that's not AI. Being in the actual space where something happened, being there with real artifacts and real tangible connections to the past, it's going to be more important than ever. And so this is a really important time for us to be having this conversation. This is why Heidi and I are doing this, because we are at a really important point right now where there is an opportunity for historical sites, museums, and the DMOs to be working together to engage the public with real history that they will walk away with, a real impact from visiting and having those experiences.
Yeah, I had a guest on my podcast, and for the life of me, I can't remember his name, but he was from the College Football Hall of Fame. And they've worked really hard on creating an experience that still has that historical preservation. And they even have the opportunity for people to speak to holograms of the people who have passed that are no longer around. And I'm not sure how deeply intuitive it is, but even when you walk in, you tell them who your favorite team is. And then you get a tailored experience that helps you understand how your team is infused into the story of college football along the way. And these are minor things that you can do. I shouldn't say minor, because it actually is pretty major, the customization that they've done. But it's things that you can do to help create an experience as opposed to a scholarly experience. And if you think about the strengths that most, and I know there's exceptions to this rule, but most museum operators and historians have, compared to the skill set that destination marketers have, those are two very complementary experiences. So the historical or the museum operators, they're great at historical preservation and organizing the information. Destination marketers should be helping these operators build experiences that make people want to come back, that make people want to share it, and that will create moments that actually get a lot more attention than somebody standing there reading a placard in a museum, right? And so I really feel like some of the stuff that you're describing here in the dynamic between the destination and the museums, and I can't think of a destination that doesn't have a valuable museum within it in some way, shape, or form. There are so many incredible museums out there. The destination has to help them build experiences, and that's such a great opportunity for the blending of those two skill sets. What do you think, Heidi?
I absolutely agree. I think that this experiential link is what is driving so much tourism, especially in the museum space these days, that people actually want to get away from the digital life and be able to do something that's hands-on. I had an experience. I do hearth cooking at our local museum every year for Museums by Candlelight, and Jake can talk about that event in a second from the DMO perspective. But as I was hearth cooking, I was talking to children coming through, and we had a loom in the corner, and two little girls about 10 said, "I know how to weave on a loom." And I said, "Oh, how did you learn to do that?" And they said, "YouTube." And that was a sort of aha moment for me. We talk about AI, but YouTube and TikTok are also being used for especially the younger generations to learn these hands-on skills. There's a want and a desire to do something that's hands-on, that's away from a screen. And that is a role that museums can play. And to go back to your point about how DMOs can sort of help museums, I'm going to turn it over to Jake, who does a great job through Visit Frederick with the museums in our area.
Yeah, Frederick County has always been a kind of a hub for history. Kind of sits at the crossroads of Maryland, kind of in the center of the state. Gettysburg's about an hour or less than an hour to the north. DC, Baltimore, less than an hour away to the south and the east. And so history has always been an important part of the visitor experience in Frederick and heritage travel has been going back to the early origins of the tourism industry. Frederick has been cashing in on its incredible Civil War history and other eras of history that happened in our destination. And so to capitalize on this in the last, 4 decades, there were events and organizations put into place. We have a historic sites consortium that include dozens of museums and historic sites that all work together, meet on an almost monthly basis, host events together. And one of those events Heidi mentioned, Museums by Candlelight, which has been going almost 40 years. The second Saturday of December is where all of our museums and historic sites in Frederick County offer free admission, extended hours, and special programming. And that is for us as the destination. It's an incredible opportunity because all of these sites are open. You get people coming in, bringing their kids just for that experience. And then it's also the holiday season. So they're going to be shopping. They're going to be eating in local restaurants. It's that kind of perfect combination of bringing together the historic sites, the heritage travel element, and then turning that into other dollars being spent in the destination. And so we, as Visit Frederick, are always thinking about how we can work with the Historic Sites Consortium to capitalize on opportunities like that, where we can all kind of work together to all be sledding in the same direction and turning that into visitor experiences that are going to bring people back. And we have a word of mouth, and return visitation is such a huge part of our visitor makeup in Frederick, and a big part of that is the heritage tourism side of our visitation in Frederick County.
Yeah, Jake, I think that's a great example of mixing the two skill sets and ultimately resulting in some great opportunities for visitors and for the businesses that are involved in participating. I want to go back, Heidi, to something that you said, because if I had to come up with what I believe is one of the biggest misses currently in the destination marketing space when it comes to museums, you said that these girls learned to use a loom on YouTube, right? Well, when we talk about historical preservation, if your content only lives in your geographical location and people can only get access to that history, I'm sorry, but the chances of you actually acquiring that customer are very low. The chances of them actually learning the true history, you don't have a lot of control over that. And we're in a time now when attention is the number one commodity that we're all trying to kind of achieve, right? And museums have a unique opportunity to create content and publish content that gets adequate attention and allows them to have as many people as possible see the history that they're making such a critical effort to preserve. And so one of the things that I'd love to see more museums do, and in this destination supporting museums to do, is take the history they're preserving and convert it into publishable content in a variety of different ways, whether that's a podcast for the individual museum, whether that's a YouTube channel, whether that's even a newsletter. I don't care what your format is, but museums actually should be the foremost media producer on the topic that they represent. And I think that's a huge opportunity for museums to protect their influence and protect their existence as time goes on.
Yep, wholeheartedly agree. I can see this from, I had an experience in this area that we've been discussing in my time just before leaving the museum world. I spent COVID working for the National Museum of Civil War Medicine, and it's a medical museum. We're in the worst public health crisis in 100 years. So we were pumping out content, built up the YouTube channel, was able to monetize that, social media content going out regularly, video content especially. And we saw a massive jump in membership, not just in our general location around the Delaware, Maryland, DC, Virginia area up into Pennsylvania, which is where our membership base was really located, but all over the United States and even around the world. We had people joining from Denmark, becoming members of the museum because of that digital content. And so I saw the value of that firsthand, because we were able to tap into and own that kind of market share online about that topic, about 19th century American medical history. But we were always, from a content perspective, what we were always trying to do, because you'd think like Civil War medicine's a pretty narrow swath to talk about history, but it's connected to so many other things, including modern healthcare. And so we were always drawing that connection. I would say, I think one of the most important elements for historic sites, museums, is the relevance piece, to make that history relevant, whether that is a topic like Civil War medicine, or if it's a local historical museum, making that history connect to what's happening today, whether it's about a location and how it's changed, or people in the community whose story is particularly impactful. Tell those stories. And you are going to see people in your local community or around the globe are going to interact with that content, and they're going to know your name. And the next time they're in town, they're going to go for a visit.
Yeah, I want to illustrate an example of that here. So if I started this show talking about a technological watershed moment that we were at right now, right, where nothing would ever be the same. If I am the museum that houses Eli Whitney's cotton gin, I'm saying, yes, you're in a technological watershed moment today. Don't forget the watershed moment that happened when the cotton gin was invented. And oh, by the way, if you want to see the full history, come here, right? Like, you can connect the past to the future. You just have to do it in a creative way, and you have to frame it correctly. Heidi, when you are presenting to these museums and destinations, is there a framework that you give them, or some sort of like actionable process that helps them understand how to do a better job of the kind of co-promotion between both organizations?
Well, yeah, the first thing that Jake and I always emphasize is just forming relationships. That's the bread and butter of both organizations, is getting to know each other. Especially for DMOs, in my role with MAPRA, I talk to over 60 DMO folks on basically a weekly basis. And I hear over and over again, oh, I just found out that, XYZ happened in my destination. And I think the breakdown isn't that either organization doesn't care. It's that there's not often opportunities for DMOs and for museum folks to be in the same room and to be sort of sharing the stories that the historic organizations have, and then for the DMOs to be sharing that marketing know-how. So Jake and I are encouraging them to talk to each other, and that can take various formats. Jake mentioned the consortium that exists in Frederick. In Pennsylvania and Maryland, we're lucky to have heritage area programs, which very naturally sort of facilitate this type of collaboration. But then that's the type of work that I do too, in support of both DMOs and museums, is helping to put together product. Jake can speak to the fact that DMOs are low on staff and low on budget also, and that anytime a museum or a group of museums can put together some sort of product, whether that's a tour or an event, and can hand that off to the DMO, that really benefits everybody.
I love that. Would you add to that, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how valuable it is to have. We have a number of really great historical societies and organizations here that are doing incredible work. Well, I'll shout out one of them, Catoctin Furnace, which has a site relevant to the America 250 commemorations going on this year. It's an iron furnace that went into blast in 1776 and made cannonballs and weaponry for George Washington's army, the Battle of Yorktown, that secured American victory. But they also have a complicated history. The people making those weapons were enslaved workers, skilled enslaved iron workers who were kidnapped from Africa, brought here to the soon to be United States because of their skills in iron making, and their lives were incredibly hard and brutal. And so it's a really complicated story. And an organization like Catoctin Furnace, they have no full-time, they have no staff whatsoever. It's an all volunteer led organization, and they have done an incredible job of creating, to what Heidi said, creating product, thinking in a tourism marketing kind of way, doing history, doing it properly in its context and telling complicated stories very well, but then thinking about how can we get this to the people. Let's create an Iron Festival. So a few years back, they created the Maryland Iron Festival, and in partnership with us, we have a grant program called the TRIP program that we fund nonprofits and projects by nonprofits and government agencies. We will help to fund those projects. We've spent just about $5.5 million over the last 20 years to support projects like this. And they are just one of numerous historic sites and museums in our region that we've worked with to create that tourism experience in Frederick, to lean into the fact that we are a heritage destination, that many people are going to Gettysburg or Washington, Baltimore, to the Smithsonian's, to Gettysburg National Military Park. We have made Frederick into a place that these heritage travelers want to stop, because we have a variety of different experiences that they can have when they're here, where they can learn, engage with culture, get a little bit of civics as well, learn about the making of our country, all of which is really important, especially in this year, 2026, as we're commemorating the 250th anniversary.
Well, this is where you also get into, if you do a good enough job supporting the experience creation for the museums, what you actually get is an indispensable experience that results in the entire destination getting that financial and economical benefit, right? So I think it's a great initiative. I love that you guys are out kind of training people on how to do this. I guess, is there a final takeaway? Like, if you wanted, those that are listening to remember nothing else from this discussion, but they take one thing away, what would that be?
Well, I would say in our conversations with the museums, Jake is sort of our shining star. I mean, he and his colleagues just do a fabulous job supporting the history and culture of the Frederick area. But not all DMOs are the same. And there's some museums out there who raise their hands and say they're frustrated that their DMO doesn't see the value of history and culture. So I would just encourage your listeners to just give that some thought. And history and culture may not be a primary tourism driver in every destination in the country, but it is in most, or a better majority of them. So I would just encourage your DMOs to really reach out to your museums, your cultural organizations, and explore the opportunities that are there.
Yeah, there's a layer of history to your experience, no matter what destination you're in. It just depends on if you've actually done the work to identify it and capitalize on it. I think you're 100% correct on that. Jake, what about you?
Yeah, I'll lean in even further to that. I will say that, for DMOs, I think, and having heard those, people saying, "Oh, our DMO from History World, our DMO is not receptive to these stories," or, we've heard that. Heidi and I have heard that a lot. I would say from the DMO side, I think it's advantageous in thinking about the future, as we've been talking about a lot. Even though in this podcast about the past, we have been talking a lot about the future, and I think for the future, that opportunity to own these stories, but also to find these really niche stories, these really kind of micro histories of place, are great opportunities where there are just a myriad of stories. You can find hundreds, thousands of stories of place that can be utilized to tell the story of a destination. And the keepers of those stories are those local museums. And they're the ones that are going to have the stuff, the artifacts, but oftentimes they have the knowledge and the expertise, and they may need some training to get that story out in a way that's really presentable. But it's about that relationship. It's about building trust, building knowledge between the DMO and the historic site, that you can work together. And it is going to be a more beneficial relationship for both sides, especially as we're moving into the future, where that value of those niche stories and that sense of place is going to be more important than ever.
Awesome. Guys, this has been really valuable and educational for me. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. And I think you're doing very, very important work. And I think for some of the preservation of history is an underrated initiative, I think, and you guys are doing a great job to make sure that not only are we preserving history, but we're making it desirable to be consumed by the younger generation, which I think is really, really important. Appreciate both of you guys taking the time. If people want to learn more about either of you and what you do, and Jake, I'll start with you and then go to Heidi, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so kind of on the work front, visitfrederick.org is where all of our wonderful destination elements live. If you want to see how we present history through Visit Frederick, would definitely recommend that. It's a big part of what we do on the website. Personally, I blog at winninghistory.com and podcasting about a lot of the topics that we've been discussing at Public History with Justin, Jake, and Molly.
Awesome. And everybody go listen to that podcast. Heidi, what about you?
You can find me on my website, heritagetourismstudio.com, and I am on LinkedIn at Heidi G. Schlag.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again, you guys, for coming in. Really appreciate you sharing your stories with us. And thanks, everybody, for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to leave us a rating or a review. It helps us continue to bring you amazing guests like Jake and Heidi. Thanks, everybody, and have a good week. Guys, have you created your profile yet on Tourism IQ? Tourism IQ has become one of the very best resources in the destination marketing industry. You can see all the latest jobs there, and Lori Farr, who many of you may know from when she was doing the travel vertical, she's the editorial director at Tourism IQ, and she puts together all the latest available jobs. She tells us where people have gone when they take a new job. It's called People on the Move. She posts the latest RFPs. We have a lot of thought leadership there from different leaders in the industry. And really, Tourism IQ has become one of the very best places for you to develop professionally in the destination marketing space. It's got all the resources you need, and it's growing every day. We have over 530 active profile users. These are people that have created profiles on the site. And then we have another 2,800 active lookers who haven't created a profile, but they are there consuming the content and revisit the site on an ongoing basis. This site is growing every day. I'm so proud of what it's become, and I need everyone to go create a profile and see the incredible resources that are being posted for our industry on a daily basis. mytourismiq.com is the URL. Please go check it out. Fill out a profile on mytourismiq.com.